Okay. Hi, I'm going to call the Concord School Committee meeting to order and note that we are being recorded.
And I'll call the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee meeting to order. We are immediately going to move into executive session.
A motion.
I need a motion for the Concord School Committee and the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee. Will enter into executive session under purpose 3 of the open meeting law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and return to open session at approximately 7 p.m.
So moved. Second.
For both?
Are those for both committees?
For both. Aye, for both committees.
Any
Rainey, aye.
discussion?
Oh, sorry.
Roll call?
By roll call?
Rainey, aye.
For both.
For both, sorry.
You vote aye for both. Booth, aye for both.
About aye for both.
Johnston, aye for both.
Modell, aye for region.
All right.
Thank you. See you in a
We'll
bit.
be back.
make a public comment, just drop the blue sheet off over here, please. You give them to Aaron, then you get it. You ready?
Again, calling the Concord School Committee meeting back into order.
And calling the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee meeting back to order. Please know we're being recorded. So do we have public comments?
Yes, okay.
You can come up over here when I turn those on.
Turn on.
Have a seat, get comfortable. There we go.
Yeah. So I'm Carolyn Wilkins and I live on Hillside Avenue. First, I just really want to thank everyone for your service. It was a huge job and I just want to say this, I don't know, 10, 15-year resident, I really appreciate your service, so thank you all
Thanks.
very much.
You're welcome.
I have 2 kids in the school system. This is a pretty generic, it actually speaks to, I noticed on the agenda tonight, you are reviewing in the handbook, students' rights and responsibilities. I'm not sure, and I looked at that, what that content includes. I'm not sure this is a pure fit, but I woke to the headline a couple of mornings ago, maybe you guys saw it, that there was some white nationalist content floated in town and the police had it and they were concerned about it. I happen to be reading a book called Call to Forgive. It's written by the reverend whose wife was murdered in South Carolina by a white nationalist. It's an incredibly powerful book. I won't go into any more about the book, but my point was simply, I'm sure fueled in part by what I had read the night before, and then hearing that unfortunate update, I thought about this community, and I thought about these schools, and I thought about what opportunity or what incentive or what does this tell us as a community? We need to remind our constituents, our parents, and our students is their responsibility. You know, I would hate to see this kind of content floating in the schools, and it could already be, I have no idea. I tend to think not, but I'm an optimist. So that's it. I just really want to urge this community to think about, as you think about their rights and responsibilities. I didn't see anything overtly, obviously, that spoke to this, but the first item on that kind of did. But is that an invitation for us as a community to remind the community, the parents and the students, about the importance, about our views of no tolerance of that sort of racial hatred? I just want to share it with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
So I just will let you all know that I am writing a cultural competency newsletter before the end of the week. So you will hear all of what we're working on and I think perfectly aligned with your comments. So thank
May
you.
I refer to this?
Sure.
So thank you very much. I would invite you, if you have the time, tomorrow at 9:30. There's an open meeting of the policy subcommittee. It's a public meeting, no?
Yes.
Public meeting here, the policy subcommittee. And the first thing on the agenda tomorrow is a suggested policy about civil rights and hate crimes. That is not currently on our agenda, which is precisely an answer to this, and unfortunately to a few things that did happen in schools in the last few years.
Thank you. Recognitions, unfortunately, are a victim of the date change. We'll hear from them later in the year when we can reschedule. We have minutes to approve from a joint meeting on November 19th and So I would take a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Chairs and liaisons reports. I have something to talk about under correspondence, but I don't have a chair's report.
Were you at the breakfast this morning?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that there was.
So long ago.
Yeah, I know.
It was actually pretty good. I mean, it was not a heavy attendance. There were probably 9 of us there. And some discussion about the affordable housing initiatives that are going on. Again, something that I would recommend people in the schools pay attention to. And the Climate Action Advisory Board is active and I can't remember if there's an article that they're putting forward or not. What else? There was an update from the Board of Health about vaping and tobacco use. And I thank them on our behalf for what they're doing. Update on bylaws, on zoning bylaws. And at that point I had to leave. So
Right.
I think it had wrapped up shortly thereafter, but I did give them the update that you sent over about the middle school building committee.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Well, sorry, I'll just add quickly, I mean, we were together a week ago, so there isn't too much to add, but since then, the League of Women Voters hosted their coffee and conversation about the middle school, and it was very well attended, and great questions and conversation, and with thanks to Lori and Tim Holt and Pat Nelson from the building committee who were also there. It was a great event.
Yep.
Others?
Actually, 3 of us were yesterday. Yesterday it was?
No.
The day before yesterday. In terms of the Board Affairs public meeting, we presented our document, the resolution that we took, and it was a very animated discussion. And all the best show in town, including a representative from the Association for Smokers and Nicotine, and the gentleman that asked the Board of Health to ban donuts as well, because they are unhealthy. So it was all across the board.
Okay.
And the only comment I'll make about that is, it sort of opened my eyes to the notion of, because the argument was, why do we need to ban vaping products? Because the state's going to take care of that. But the state would not ban, as they call them, combustible products. And often kids who are already addicted to nicotine would switch to cigarettes. And if we still allow the sale of those, we make it quite, obvious that they can purchase them. They'll go ahead and do so. So I thought that was very interesting.
I think that another thing that I'm not sure, well, I'm quite sure that I wasn't aware of before, is that what the Board of Health was asked to do in this ban is actually a step further than any other community until now, and that's to ban the sale of non-vaping, which means all tobacco products anywhere in town except for adults, 21 and older, which is a step that will take us to, without any doubt,
We're
to,
talking about it.
yeah,
They're talking.
yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
they're going to vote next week, perhaps.
and
And the science has been clear for a long time.
Yeah.
If we can postpone first use, we're going to promote public health.
without any doubt, but it will actually have repercussions.
And that's
All right.
one thing that came up this morning about the vote. I think Deb said she was going to recommend they hold off on voting until
After the
at least February,
Okay,
because there was so much evidence that came out of the
good.
meeting
That's
this
the chair
week
of the
that
board.
they want to have a meeting to review that.
Good. That's very,
It was an interesting discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Anything else? Okay,
Correspondence.
correspondence. We had this is actually more elementary, we got an email.
Oh, the invitation.
Which is basically an invitation to Concord Safe Technology, presenting a public forum on wireless technology, safety and solutions to be held January 12th at 2 to 5, I think.
She corrected it to 2 to 5.
2 to 5 at Willard Elementary School.
That's a Sunday.
Panel with expertise in health, engineering, communications will be presenting and fielding questions from the community. So we're all invited to that. We received about 20 emails.
32.
32?
Yes.
32.
Okay.
I counted
32.
today also.
Okay. I meant to
I'm in
count, but.
I have 30 here.
Really only two with different names.
Yeah. So, 32 emails about encouraging us to move to electric buses. The Mothers Out Front has a national campaign toward this effort. Most of what we received was some form of the letter that was sent to us by Mothers Out Front. And in the absence of a committee and the feeling that we should do something quickly, I reached out to Mothers Out Front about meeting with us to talk about how to approach this, talk about it, should we develop a plan, who should be involved in it, and they've accepted doing that. I've also asked Brian Foltz, who is here tonight and is proposing a warrant article encouraging transition, and Alice Kaufman, former select board member, active member of environmental committees in town and on the light board, and everybody has agreed to sit down and meet with us. Responded to everybody who sent emails to us that we were doing that. And so we're in the process of trying to find a time to get together and talk about this. It's certainly something we've talked about here off and on over the years. We talked about it this year relative to the VW grant. So one of the things we need to think about, and given that we meet shortly after the new year, it'd probably be before that meeting takes place, we can be thinking about it, but we need to have a couple of people from our committee, 3 if somebody from the region sits on it, to go engage in that meeting. Cynthia's offered to participate in that, so I'd certainly be willing to do it. So we should be thinking about that.
What's the meeting?
It'll be a meeting with Mothers Out Front and a couple other townspeople, Brian Foltz being one of them, and to talk about how to go about this.
I just need a little clarification. I read out the emails, but does the region buy buses or the
Both.
Both do.
CPS? They both buy
do.
buses.
Both do.
And
Leasing bus.
do we have any restrictions that we can buy whatever buses we want? I mean, is it all discretion
We can buy whatever buses we
Well,
want
there's
currently.
a
The
cost
money is
ramification.
the driver.
to? No, I understand, but I mean, there's no rules about it.
No.
No.
And we buy like one a year?
Right now it's
Well, I know we
Right.
bought 4, but that's a lot.
Lease usually.
Well, however we
We're
procure it.
leasing.
And
We're doing 4 this year,
2 and 2.
and that sort of brings us current to the level and age and serviceability of buses we had back in '08 before the stock market crashed and the recession came along, and we
So like how
had
many
some pretty
buses
big
is
cuts.
that?
It's 42.
That's for everybody or just
It's
for?
for both districts.
42, so like 10-year bus life.
10 to 12, yeah.
Okay, so you could, once you decide if it was affordable, reconfigure the fleet over a decade.
Over time. In fact,
Yeah.
just for reference, and we won't get into a full discussion on this, it's not our agenda, but we have, over the past several years, getting to the point where we are of having the electric bus, had this discussion a lot, and the general game plan has been reach out as aggressively as possible for any grant money
Right.
to enable this.
Did
So
you
we
get
are,
some for the one you got?
what's that?
Yeah.
You got
Oh.
a grant?
The one
Exactly.
we have is, was a state grant, the one we're attempting to get is a grant, it's state grant money being funded from the VW settlement. I think the discussion that's kind of developing around this right now is that we should have a sort of a more considered plan about
Correct.
how to go about this. Recognizing that the industry is not able to keep up with demand at the moment. When we get if and when we get approval for the grant from the VW bus, we place an order, we won't see that bus for at least a year, most likely.
And when you get such a bus, it can actually run the route when it's charged?
Yeah,
Well,
our experience
the
with
first
the
one
first
took-
one was that we, until January of this year, after the bus had been sent back to Canada, basically they sent us back the same body and frame with the new bus underneath it. And it's been reliable since then, and we're using it on a regular bus route. Our hope is that the next bus we would buy would probably be Thomas or Bluebird, and those are they're building a lot of them, they're in service, and but a lot of districts around the country are trying to add electric buses. I think anything we can do to the community can do to push on the state to accelerate funding, but there are some things that sort of reach outside school use within the community that could be beneficial to this process and may have some efficiency to transitioning the fleet, and I think it would be valuable to explore those things, and I think that's really what we're being asked to do at this point by the people who have brought it up.
I think I'm talking only for myself, but I'm quite sure that every person in this committee is totally committed to the long-term solution of reducing emission gases. The question is how do we build it into the game plan and do it correctly.
Yeah.
I
If
don't
just-
think there's any doubt that
Again, last question for me. If a diesel or whatever his bus costs unit one, what's roughly the cost if you don't get subsidies?
3.5,
3.7,
3.7.
But,
depending on the cost of putting the charger in the ground.
$330,000 a bus,
but there is,
as opposed
So it's
to
1 plus 200?
as opposed to
One
90
plus-
to 100.
Two,
It's 1 plus 200.
250.
right,
at a very long one.
could I, there's a lot of, there's a lot of conversation around this because there is cost savings beyond the actual cost of the bus. So we have to, it's not just, we dismiss it because it's a much more expensive device. So I think we need to gather some facts, and it's going to take a little while. It's not,
Yeah.
so, so I sense that we agree that it's okay to have this meeting.
Yes, everybody comfortable with that?
Anybody
Oh,
opposed
yeah.
to that idea?
Okay.
So who is taking the meeting?
Cynthia.
Cynthia and Wally, and from the region, David?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Cynthia, yes.
How many people do you want? I mean, how many do they want? Or we want?
Well, we can't have more than two,
Further from.
then from Concord, we could have
Right.
three if,
Posted as a-
and I think it would be
Posted.
beneficial for somebody from the region
That's fine.
to be there, because,
Is that
obviously.
meeting scheduled already?
No.
No.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Um,
Great.
okay. Any comments, any other discussion?
No, I want to thank everybody who emailed us. Some of them have individualized comments, they're very useful. I thought Alice Kaufman's and a number of other emails were, had a lot of good ideas. She thought it might encourage people to ride the bus, because I think community members and parents and students would be energized to ride an electric bus. I think it's kind of cool.
But if I can say something,
Sure.
add something to this, which the chair cannot say, because, and I say it for the chair, in the form that people send us with a comment, there is a choice between whether you want an answer or not. That means a personal answer. If you're running a campaign, I think you should say that you don't want a personal answer, other the chair of the committee will not be able to ever work on anything else but answering one by one 32 emails. So if it's a campaign, if it's something personal, you should say yes. If it's a campaign, I think the right thing to do is actually to tick the no.
Thank you,
Personal
Paul.
Thank you.
My comments on this will come up during budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
But in the case of Wally as a chair, go ahead, tick the yes.
So, any other correspondence? I don't think so.
That's all I have.
So, on to the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you. So I've given you highlights of a lot of work that's gone on, so that I'll try to be as brief as possible since I know you read. First topic is on student wellness. We've been working very closely with consultant Rachel Polliner, who is a national leader. She lives locally, but is really gaining a national expertise in social and emotional learning. She's working both with the leadership team, with the formal social and emotional committee that Kristen is running, and also working specifically right now to support the high school advisory program. The middle school advisory program's had more recent updates, so the high school is well-timed for her support. We're learning a lot, and we're realizing what this really means. It's both those formal programs that happen through Open Circle and advisory, but it's much more about the day-to-day way we are with kids and how we interact with kids and the connections they have and the relationships they have, and how we really continue to do better and better at that so kids feel really valued and part of the community. So it's been really great work. Educator evaluation. Kristen and I are touring all of the schools and meeting with all of the administrators who evaluate educators, really working on syncing up consistent processes, consistent approaches, support to them, coaching to them. It's been very, very valuable and well worth our time on both sides. We get much more synced up of a big picture view, and they're getting a lot of support on the individual level of the work that they're doing. We're also continuing to meet with the CCTA in a committee that will parallel our big picture bargaining work so that we can tighten timelines and due dates and procedural pieces just like we did with the CTA last year. That being said, there's a lot of rich dialogue on the process itself and how it's executed and what's meaningful to them and to us. Innovative pedagogy, we're running full tilt with the Innovative Learning Committee. All of the principals, Kristen and I sit on that committee, and we really started to prioritize what the work is. And I think on Monday when we met, it was very clear that a vision of what that means is becoming the top priority. So we're all on the same page when we start to talk about innovation and authentic learning and inquiry, and start to put all that into a package of what that's going to mean for the Concord and high school. In a very great example of some of that work, Rivers and Revolutions just finished its first half of the year, and half of the 5th grade classrooms. All of the 5th graders who were engaged this first half of the year visited the high school last week. They're supposed to be at the North Bridge today, which I think they actually pulled off in the middle of the cold and snow and all of that. Really great energy going on there. We're having early discussions of what a Rivers Like program could be at the middle school. CEF has shown a lot of interest in helping to get us some seed money to get something going. It won't be Rivers exactly, but middle school-ish. So more to come on that. It's a think tank right now. In terms of inclusion and cultural competency, as you know, we lost our first very exciting pre-K-12 day to the winter that has already started to consume us. So we're going to be looking to see if we can reschedule that. So unfortunately, all that rich cultural and inclusion work that was planned has been postponed. In the meantime, though, a number of other initiatives are either being revisited or kicked off in a bigger way. The middle school is expanding its playbook initiative work. They were with the Celtics last week and then trained the kids at the end of the week, so that we're gonna have so many more kids who've experienced this firsthand and then become ambassadors out. The Tenacity Challenge is a Bedford-based program for Latino and African American students, very academically oriented. We've been very active in this in the middle school, and we're going to expand to the high school. Very excited, we learned last week that a METCO grant we had submitted has been accepted, so we're going to be bringing a theatrical play about racial divide entitled Mr. Joy. I know Andrew's seen it, our METCO director, and is really excited. The kids will have a performance, as many high school kids as we can, and then an evening performance as well, so more to come. And another really excited work here that's progressing pretty quickly. Special Olympics Unified Track is gonna roll this spring. I would never have thought we'd pull it off for this spring,
great.
so the energy is really huge. We're actively building best buddies as well, so all of this is just, the energy and momentum just continues to pick up. And those are the real formal initiatives, which is just catalyst to the work of, again, the everyday way we are with each other is what really matters, culturally or special ed or whatever it is. So hopefully the more, as we bring in these programs, it just builds our capacity and our foundational work. Otherwise, in special education, we had a forum today at the middle school for parents as follow-up to the one that Ruth and I had back a month ago now. Not hugely attended, but very, very successful for the folks who did, I think, so we're glad for that. And as you saw, we're going to bring the launch kids here to you at a later date because they couldn't do our snow date. School safety, we're about ready to have identification badges for all staff updated, so they'll be wearing them in January. We are very highly versed in a walkie-talkie discussion so that police, fire, school, and when I say schools, I mean schools, all of us can talk to each other through a very robust walkie-talkie system. So we're excited that that level of communication could be at our fingertips. It's one of our challenges for sure. Trying to run by cell phone in a district that's not thoroughly cell phone covered is definitely a limiting factor. We've had a lot of discussion at the leadership team in terms of what incident management teams look like. The middle school's really doing some great work there, so we're trying to get those structures consistent. And the security cameras that were funded through the governor's money that became available last year are in and active and giving us certainly, especially at the elementary and middle schools, more visibility outside, who's outside and when they're coming to the door and some of the peripheral spots.
So all the cameras are outside that you're talking about?
Yeah, we didn't add cameras inside. There's some discussion of what we might, certainly the middle school as we build that, and the high school's having some discussion of what they might wish we might look at, so more to come on that. Environmental sustainability, composting, I'm very excited, began this week at the high school, so led by the composting crew, 50 high school kids who volunteered to be part of this, so excited to see that up and running. We did survey the high school seniors as to their daily mode of transportation and why they come that way. We're going to do the juniors as well, try to get any further insight as to, so loop into the parking conversation. We're trying to tap and gather information. We are collaborating formally with Concord-Carlisle and working with them on speakers as they bring them in, and so we're really excited that the founder of the Sunshine Movement's coming to Concord in January. And I did meet with our local high school chapter, the Sunshine Movement, about a month ago. A lot of great ideas there and energy. And then, my role out in the community and collaboration, as usual, felt like there was too much to write, especially this week as I'm hopping school to school and concert to concert. But I did go to Willard's International Fair, the Senior Citizen Lunch at the high school. We're going to bring to you Partners in Rhyme, which is a senior citizen in 9th grade partnership that happens through some grant money that we're trying to expand on. So they're going to come in February now and share with you both seniors and the high school kids to talk on what that poetry experience is like. It's just a fascinating connection that is the focus of the relationship between the two generations. So those are the highlights of a lot of the amazing things going on. And
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot
It's
of
a
good
full
stuff.
one.
So,
Can I? Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You're welcome.
I just wanted to mention about concerts that there was the Prism
Yeah.
last Saturday.
Outstanding.
It was really outstanding.
Yeah, it was outstanding.
May I ask if there is any continuation to the discussion you started on our behalf with Challenge Success?
Indeed, I spoke with them yesterday from my snowbound home, so I'm going to put a summary together and get that to you. I spoke with one of their representatives in California. It took them this much time to figure out who would best consult with us.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to say all of this stuff, we get so wound up in a lot of what we're working on sometimes, but we look at this, and this is a particularly rich report, and you give it to us a lot, but these are the priorities we've all talked about for the year, and so I just want to thank you for all the detail in here, because this is the crux of a lot of what we have said is most important to us. And
yeah, I mean, the
so
strategic plan is
student wellness
driving
stuff
this,
and
so thank you.
and the
If it
innovative
shows, that's,
pedagogy, and I mean, it's coming straight, especially having been involved with the creation of
Yeah.
that strategic plan from a few years ago, to see from the beginning of that to what's actually happening now on the ground is really incredible.
and
So
probably the most exciting part is that it's not really, it's either collaboratively led or sometimes very teacher-student led, and that's when you feel like things really will move and change because people are seeing value and seeing ways they can contribute and start to shift and do things a little bit better. So it's a lot of great work.
it really is just great movement on all of those
Yeah,
priorities. Thank you.
It takes, kudos to this whole leadership team and then those folks who are engaging with us because it's not a one-person event by any stretch.
That's great.
Lori, if I might,
Sure.
I want to reference the unified track team.
Yeah.
As an example of the balance that you and other educational leaders are trying to strike between focus on individual groups and not over-focus because we're building one school community. So I appreciate that balance that you're trying to strike.
Thank you.
Just a question, the walkie-talkie system would work when there were power outages?
Yes, as long as we keep them charged enough, yeah.
Yeah.
They're battery operated.
What's the
so.
range?
We've got a repeater already in one place because the high school's already had one. We're working with the vendor down at Fair if we need a second repeater and
Is it, but
we
it's
cross
intra-school,
town.
not across schools, or it is both?
Both,
So you
both.
could sit here in Ripley and,
Yep, and police and fire.
The repeaters would go down if there was a power outage? Or are
I
they
don't know
on
the answer to
battery?
that, good question.
Some, battery power.
Repeaters usually have a bank, a power
I
bank.
would think,
It
is
should
that,
work for
so
X
we can
amount
get you
of
more
hours.
detail. Some of this
Safety
funding is also
equipment.
coming from the governor's security money last year, so
That's
not
great.
all of it, but
It's
some of it.
rightly done, it should not.
Right.
I would
Part
hope
of
not, I
the
didn't want to say that
It
for
needs-
sure,
it needs
yeah, I
to-
don't know.
Don't have to
If
defeat
you
the
have power
purpose.
down, you can use it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, because we know the cell reception around town is challenging.
But
Yeah.
it's something that should be, before you purchase more.
Yes, Claire, I'm sure the people in the conversation know the answer to that. Yes.
Okay,
Great.
so, on to the regional budget. Basically, wrong one. We've had many conversations about the budget, and surprised there's not language here. Oh, that's an action item.
Yes.
I don't know that there's anything new to bring into the equation. So unless somebody has something they want to talk about, we'll be back to this momentarily to vote to approve it. But
just so, remind me now, the Concord Finance Committee guideline is common to
It
this.
was-
Lined up with that?
It was,
So it's lined up with that, because we came in below it,
Yeah.
so they lowered
So
their
they lowered their
guideline to
guideline.
our
Everybody's good.
number.
Everybody's
This is not
Yes.
line
And
item.
I know the Carlisle just came out with theirs.
They're in the vote.
Yes.
They were also fine with their.
Yeah, so that,
Funny how the decreases are
funny
not a
how,
hard
we-
sell.
when we come in with a low number,
Yeah,
everybody's
okay, very good.
quite happy.
So I would simply note again for the public that this year looks like the Carlisle consideration precedes the Concord consideration for this item.
According to town meeting
And I
planning.
think that's important, given town meeting in Concord last year. I think this is the appropriate order for this year. both towns.
Yeah, as far as I know, and Wally knows more, I think the goal was just to make sure they weren't simultaneous. I
Yeah.
don't know that anyone was
I mean,
getting
that was
preferential.
the genesis of that was, we would have taken, if we had done school articles in a traditional fashion, they likely would have come out Monday night, which is the same time Carlisle's on. Where Carlisle will work hard to make their town meeting a one-night affair, and we'll work hard to keep ours at 3. The moderator has specifically stated that we'll take up school articles on Tuesday night.
Is it night 2?
Night
Two,
2,
yeah.
yes.
Anything new to report on the capital article?
I think, well, we had a conference call yesterday. We get a lot done on snow days. We had a conference call yesterday with Gail, Jared, and Ian, and Russ Hughes, facilities director. We talked with the 2 engineers who did the feasibility study and now have done a design proposal. We really asked them to talk us through some pieces of how they got to that number, and some of that's based on some questions we got from the board, and try to get those answers. So what they've said very clearly is they know the goal is to give us that number that is conservative enough that the bids will come in under it, but not fluffed up so big that it's an untenable number. And they feel really strongly, they've done that vetting, knowing they're carrying some relatively strong contingencies, especially relative to drainage and the general contingency line. And both of those were much of the questions and answers of the school committee a year ago when that work happened, but also because we've shared with them that the goal is to fund the design, which we haven't finished that conversation, to fund the design, which would then better inform the bid, because we can actually put out a bid pending funding so that we know what the number is for town meeting. They had just finished a municipal project in Linfield for 100 spots. We're at 104 based on the place we landed. About 80% of that project was the straight parking lot. They had some peripheral work with some sloping and landscaping to work on, a retaining wall. So they're saying 80% of that project was the 100-spot parking lot. And they just bid it out and had a bid come in that was accepted of just over $1 million. So 80% of the million is really in line with what they've put out to us. When Jared approached them 3 weeks ago, said we were revisiting this, we asked them to dive back in and revisit all of those numbers. They did that, so that also is leading to their level of confidence. And their rule of thumb in their ongoing work has been that these are hard numbers to hear, but they're fact. $2,500 to $3,000 per space is typical, and we are in line with that. And I just want to remind you all that one other piece that we added as a committee a year ago in the work is to light the parking lot and to put in charging stations, which are $100,000 of the total cost. So I think we've felt like looping back to them strengthened our confidence in what they've proposed for design, knowing that what we really need to do is strengthen our confidence in what they've given us for an estimate, knowing what we really need is the design and the bid to happen. So the number would be reduced by the amount of the design so that we could go forward with that out of the operating budget. So that is still our recommendation, probably even stronger than it was when we met last time. And we're open to further discussion.
Okay. And we'll have discussion on that when we come to the action item.
Okay.
Which will be,
Last meeting, we did actually ask the possibility of bringing a Gale representative.
So I've offered to bring them after the first of the year. I knew there was no option to bring them on that kind of a tight turnaround a week ago. So we tried to fill that void as best we could with a phone call yesterday. We can still work to have them here in January.
so, any questions for what Superintendent just told us?
Wait, you just said we were going to discuss it during the vote. No?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, which
it's
is
sort of
the first up.
directly related to the,
There was another question that I was concerned about, and I don't think it was part of the conversation, according to the report with them, is this 21 points of unknown in the budget. It's 21 points that the fees do not include, and I've asked whether it can be, what's the range of those
Implications.
application of wetland delineation, habitat studies, mitigation design, and I don't have the faintest idea whether this will mean 10,000 or 250,000. And that was one of the questions we wanted to ask here.
Which we did. Their report back to us that they're using a very standard proposal set of language, and it allows for the work that needs to be done without them being 100% sure what that will be until they're out here. It's very similar in the way we had a contract with them a year ago for the feasibility work, and that was highly vetted through our legal counsel. So we're very comfortable with the language that's here based on how that played out, our experience with them, the advice of our counsel, and traditional language in a contract with, and that's just in the proposal. It will carry over to the contract. And, you know, just I think food for thought that typically Jared's office handles the contractual navigation along with district council.
And our council looks at it and vets it and makes
Yeah.
sure that they're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
With all due respect, the question here is not the legal language, and there's nothing wrong with the legal language here. The question is the practicalities. The legal language is okay. They give us a budget for the fees, and they tell us what the fees include and what they don't include, which is totally, there's nothing wrong with the legal language. It's not a question for lawyers. The question is to understand of 21 points that are not included, what can be the financial implication. I've got nothing wrong with the language. The language is fine. But I personally would like to understand what can be, if 5 of those are happening, what are we looking at financially?
Is another way to ask that question
Yeah.
the following. We expended $49,000 a year ago. The proposal from the same firm is up to an additional 78 to inform town meetings about whether town meetings might want to proceed with this or not. In that, perhaps I should know the answer, Yuval, in that new figure, would that work entail some assessment of those 21 potentials?
And I don't know
Entail,
whether
what do you mean by entail?
If there's a list of
Entail.
21 possible unaddressed issues and costs,
Yeah.
and were we to use operating monies this year to engage in study number 2 on this parking lot to inform town meeting, would that study address what Yuval's talking about?
Yeah, let me give you an example. I not always I succeed actually conveying what I want to very clearly. They give us an offer, financial offer for their services. I'm not speaking now about the project of 78,000. Give us a list of what it includes and a list of what it doesn't include. I'll give you one out of all the 21 is geotechnical engineering. Geotechnical engineering. Is it $5,000 to do geotechnical engineering if it's needed, or $500,000?
What is geotech?
I don't know.
You sound
That's
like-
precisely what I'm saying. I have 21 contingencies that can happen or not, and I don't understand the financial implications of those contingencies. And that's why we wanted to have a gay representative to
This
explain
kind
it.
of a
None of you will be able to answer it.
No, clearly, I can't, but, I mean, I can't answer specifically
Of
what
course.
any of those are.
But none of us know what
My
geotechnical engineering.
question, though, would be, given what they have said is included, my understanding was that they're saying to us, here's what we're including, because this is what we see as necessary to give a realistic estimate of the overall pricing for this project. And therefore, the things not included are
There.
not likely to be necessary.
Yeah, no, that's not, sorry. That's not the way.
Well, hold on, can
No,
I
that's
hear,
what it
my
says
question,
at the bottom
my
here.
question was more to Lori, because she's spoken with them, and what was it that they told you in terms of that, the expectation?
So the expectation is they will be able to have enough information to create a design
Right.
My sense, and paralleling it with the middle school even, if any of this needs to happen before we actually execute, those are two different steps. So we could decide to keep going so that we can, if any of that were needed to happen out of the operating budget, or we can wait for the capital article. But I don't believe there's any great likelihood of that, or they would be flagging it for us.
And then if we did have to put into it, it would be part of the later step, which is bid out,
Yes.
and we would understand it before we're committing
Of
to
course,
it.
they write,
Yes.
should services
Right,
be
so we're not-
supplied in these areas, or areas not previously described,
Yes.
Gradle will prepare a proposal or amendment, but that will be after we already.
Yeah, it
paid
doesn't,
them
something
75,000.
doesn't make
We-
sense, because you should be addressing this in the, this carve out, the 21, is in the, not in the big quote, ROM estimate of the paving, it's in the very specific, if I read it correctly, the very specific proposal for the engineering study, right?
Can I,
No.
can I,
Yeah, go for it.
you know, we've been talking about this site for 5 years. Most of the questions that are being asked right now could be looked at either past videos or looking at past agendas about this site, about the campus. And I think at some point there's a responsibility to understand what's gone on before having arrived here as a member. And we are way into the weeds here. These are things, one, we didn't ask them to do in the bid. And that if they are needed, would be part of the project, not this cost analysis, that gives us a better idea. There is probably nobody who knows this site better than Gail.
But that's why.
And
we
I think
talk.
at some point, we need to rely on our relationships with vendors who have done a very good job for us over the last few years, and there's no reason to think that's gonna stop. And, you know, we are into details that really go beyond the scope of what we should be doing here versus what is the responsibility of the people we have hired to do administrative work. It's not our job to write and negotiate and approve contracts. That is done by the administration. So it is perfectly okay to bring these things up, but I think we're talking about them in a way as if we'd never heard of Gale, they'd never seen the site, and we had no relationship with them whatsoever. So I think we're, you know, I mean, I really do think we're beyond the boundary here.
Can I just ask a question, just
Yeah.
to summarize, if somebody didn't watch last week? The capital warrant article, can somebody just summarize, and then the general fund expenditure, what those two things are?
Pardon me?
Can somebody summarize what the funding of what, so we have a capital warrant article,
I can try.
and then we have a general fund
Maybe to the
expenditure,
chairs.
right?
Yeah, so the general fund
Shows it.
expenditure is this. Why don't we move to that right now? Does that make sense? Because that's sort of the next step is to talk
Sure.
about, because we have two votes related to this. And it's hard to decide which one should go first because they are interdependent. But why don't we take it in the order that it's in, which is the CCHS. So may I have a motion that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee votes to approve the CCHS capital article in motion as presented?
So moved.
Have a second. No second?
There's no second
So,
to the capital article?
in that time, if you look at last week's agenda, we have the report, and it's the report for the cost of the contract is, where is it here? 70 pages out
Okay,
We're doing
would
the
the-
capital
would
article.
the- would the
It's not
superintendent
money.
explain to us
of
this?
it. $78,190.
No, but Wally, that's not the capital.
No, we're looking at the capital.
That was
Article.
790, right?
Oh, wait, sorry.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about this, I'm sorry. My bad.
Would the superintendent explain this capital article of 35,000 that I must admit I'm not sure I understand?
No, it's not a capital article of 75,000, it's the capital article,
35.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, 35?
Yeah.
So let me
That's the budget.
interrupt.
That's the budget.
no, that's the
Let me see if
budget.
we're on the same page here. We're looking at two things relative to the high school parking lot.
Right.
One is bringing before the town meetings for a second consecutive year a addition to the parking lot. This one uncoupled from the ring road. It was coupled last year.
Yeah.
We can debate what people were thinking when they voted, but it went down narrowly. That much we know. That's information that informs what we're doing tonight, along with lots of other information. I'm not looking at the number, but I'm guessing it was around 790,000 last time I looked at it.
$770,220.
Okay, thank you. So that's the capital article, and that's for fiscal 21. Then we have a second item where the superintendent, in her wisdom, she's got the authority to move money, but she came to us for support or formal support around a expenditure this year from operating funds, available operating funds, some of which made available through unanticipated state monies for an additional study by same Gale that we have a track record with, they with us, for now up to $78,000 for the purpose of, you could argue, expediting the construction. I think that language is incorrect that I saw earlier, or rather informing town meetings should they care to proceed. We're not expediting any project. Town meeting decides what projects happen and when. So again, just semantics there, but semantics are important. So I think we have two items. Operating monies this year. Does the superintendent have the school committee's support in that expenditure? And if so, then we have assurances Gail would provide us with some information that would be very, very useful to us and then to town meetings. Do I have it sort of right?
Yes, and the reason they are interconnected is because the number we've provided to you in the warrant article has been reduced minus the design work. If you don't approve the design work out of the operating funds, then we would have to increase the warrant article number to ensure that was still feasible.
The courtesy, can you check A and C on action items? And C? On action items A and C. Leave B aside for a second. Just
the
open
links.
open the two links.
I agree.
Maybe you'll understand my problem.
Yes, I can see, because A
It's
links,
the same thing. It's linked to the same.
right,
That's why I actually looked at it and didn't understand what the $35 million have to do with our parking.
right, so both of them, it's just that the capital article and the budget are on the same page, and so they're, both of them linked to
Oh.
that page.
I see.
So for the first one, for A,
No,
just
I don't
scroll to the
understand.
bottom.
I understand. So the attachment that's on Article C, which a lot of us hadn't opened yet because we're only on A
Yeah,
and
but
B, has some language there. You can dismiss the capital article language that's there because we've provided more thorough language in the first two, A and B, so that you have the numbers and you have everything around it.
So maybe
Yeah.
I'm not totally crazy. I
No, no,
don't
no.
know. At times I'm not sure.
Okay.
Fair enough, okay.
So what's the motion?
Let's
that
go
is
back
being
to
proposed?
A.
So the first motion is regarding the, I get the number, $78,190.
No,
No,
this
that's
is
B.
the capital article.
It's a
It is-
capital.
Okay,
These
so
are
let
for 770.
me interrupt, if I might.
The first article on the
I
page
believe
is,
we have to vote
Following the agenda.
we have to vote the expenditure of current operating capital for the following reasons. Current operating budget for the following reason. Should it pass, it remains not part of the capital article. Should it not pass, it would then move to the capital article. Otherwise, we foreclose that possibility. So we've got to change the order.
Yeah.
It's in that, put down.
this,
I understand.
and then this is, so these are backwards relative to the agenda. Okay.
My agenda doesn't have
Okay.
that, don't know.
So, I apologize. So So the capital article, the motion would be town
Excuse me.
approves.
Court
Point
was
of
just
order.
suggesting that.
I want to move that we take these out of the order that is in the current agenda such that we vote on the new Gale study out of current operating funds, such that we have the option, should it fail, to move that number into the capital article. Otherwise, we have trouble doing
Yeah,
that.
and that was the, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Because if we
But
if we approve this and then don't approve that, we'll have to come back and move this. So,
either way.
yeah, so
Either
we'll
way.
do it the way it is on the agenda, if that's okay.
So, what was the objection?
So, well, we can,
Either way, you might have to undo.
Either
It's a
way, you might
twin,
have
so
to
you
change.
may
Was
have
that
to
a
go
motion?
back to the first one.
was that a motion?
I
The
believe.
motion on the table is the capital order.
Okay.
I'll make it a motion. I move that we amend the agenda to take up the.
You have actually a motion on the table, I think you have to rescind it.
No, I don't know, that nobody seconded it. Okay, go ahead.
To take up the expenditure for the new Gale study for the high school parking lot out of current operating budget prior to consideration of the capital article for that same project to which we're speaking.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
We just changing the order. no?
Just
Yes.
changing the.
Yeah,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is it- Okay, so, as it is on our sheets in the link,
Then
the,
I would move that the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee authorizes the Director of Finance and Operations to fund design work for a new CCHS parking lot within the FY20 operating budget.
Erin, can you switch it to the capital article, please?
Or to the general fund, we just switched to the general fund.
You voted that one.
oh, yeah.
No, we just voted to switch the order.
That's what.
Yeah,
No,
so
B,
do we have a
sorry.
second for that?
That's, we have actually,
Isn't that-
Cynthia and I have links to a different, so we don't have a number.
All right,
Okay.
keep going, I
No, no,
don't know
let's
why
do-
we got
Let's
so
do this, it's not a
combobulated
problem, we
here.
read it here,
We
but
have
we
Aaron
have,
She just
recording
read
what
the
we're
right,
doing.
she just
We're
read the
okay.
right
yeah,
motion.
that's fine.
We're okay.
Okay.
So,
I made a motion to authorize the Director of Finance and Operations to fund design work for a new CCHS parking lot within the FY20 operating budget.
And do we have to provide a number?
It's $78,190.
Thank
For
you.
$78,190. Is there a second? There is a second.
second. Is there a second? So we don't want to do this.
I do not.
You can second.
I don't think the chair can second.
I can't second.
I thought the chair could second.
That's why we
Well,
had this discussion
if
back
it's-
there before we.
We had such a,
If there isn't a second, then
Okay, there's no second, so we will need to move this into the, is this what I'm to understand?
Yeah,
Why?
we can't really have a conversation now because we don't have a second. That's why I went to discuss it in open.
I'm gonna ask you to second it and discuss it and vote it, please, because I think
Okay.
not seconding
to
it
not have a
leaves it
discussion.
completely
I
unanswered.
second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, let's have a discussion.
I believe the political risk far exceeds the other risks of not expediting. I think that we will be misperceived as trying to force town meeting hand to the hands of town meeting, or the deliberations of town meeting last year and this year. It's, frankly, I don't think it's worth it. I think we have so many issues and requests in front of the school committee that I don't want, in front of the community, sorry, that I don't think this school committee should presume too much about the haste in which the towns want us to move on this parking lot, notwithstanding the pain it's costing people at the high school.
First of all, I want to thank you and Jared and the facilities director for all the work you've done. I know it's a lot of work and I know it's taken a lot of time and I don't want to discount that whatsoever. But I do think it did fail narrowly last year. I do think it's something that should wait a year. We can maybe try some other strategies to not resolve, we won't resolve it, to alleviate the stress that the parking problem might be having. Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like I don't appreciate the work that's gone into this on everybody's part.
I will join the quote, and I actually do not agree with Cynthia. I do believe that we need to go ahead with the plan to bring to town meeting a warrant article about building the parking lot. I'm not comfortable about advancing the $78,000 in addition to previous 48 or 50 before we get, before we get the nod from town meeting about it. I've got some other questions that I would like answers for before I take such a vote. So
If we're going around, oh, go ahead.
No, you're next.
I would say, and because they tie in, I have to comment on the parking lot itself also. Having seen this discussion and the stress that it causes for multiple years now, and seeing how close it was last year on a night when there weren't even many parents at town meeting, I think there is a lot of support for this. And having been through a lot of town meetings and discussions with community members where the school committee was asked for more information and more details and more planning, I feel like this is the responsible way to go into a town meeting, which is with all the information that we can have. We have been in a position many times where people have said to us, well, we want more details. Where's the plan? Where are the details? What are the numbers? What exactly is it going to look like? And this is our chance to have those numbers and those answers. So I feel it's irresponsible not to move forward with the design in order to look at the parking lot.
So I actually agree with both Heather and Cynthia. I agree with Heather that if we were to do the project, it makes eminent sense what you say, because I totally support that. Go in with all the facts, go in with a hard vetted number, go in with all the risks, as much as possible de-risk. But I agree with Cynthia. I don't think we should move the parking lot. I've looked at it and thought about it, and I have two issues. The first one really is the green initiative. I mean, we are supposed to be cultural leaders of this twin community, and I understand the other pressures, but is our response to all this green initiative put down more asphalt and bring in more cars? I know about the facts. I know that parents are driving twice, and I know that kids are parking on the street. I know all that stuff. But we're thought leaders. If our response is pave more stuff and bring in more cars, that's not something I can support, and that's it. The other issue is cost. Now, you mentioned, Lori, $3,000 a parking space, but that's $300,000 out of $800,000. It's really more like, if you take the whole $800,000, it's $8,000 a parking space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an obscene number, and there's got to be better use of our resources. So on those two issues, I cannot support the parking lot, and therefore, I don't recommend spending the design funds. But I agree with the principle that if you're aligned on moving a big piece of capital, you should do everything to prepare it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I agree with Heather on the use of the funds from the general fund. I am perplexed at how we arrive at this today. It's your prerogative to change your minds, but we've had significant discussion about this. Asked the administration to go down the road of preparing these things in this way, and we get here at the 11th hour, and it would appear to me we're deciding not to do this some way, shape, or form. We'll find out with the next vote, but I am absolutely baffled by how we've gotten here. I approve I would approve of doing the parking lot, and I would approve of getting the numbers ahead of time so we know what we're talking about. I do remind, just as Heather did, that these articles were taken up on 2 nights after when we anticipated they would be taken up. And we know what that means for attendance from the stakeholders some of the stakeholders of school issues. I am unclear as to, what the vote would be, should we be in that position. We have tried to do some things that relate to sustainability. All we are doing here is moving cars that are being driven to the high school area, parked off campus, to the campus. And I believe that reduces risk on the part of the kids, walking in the dark to and from their cars in the wintertime, and walking to their cars at other times of the day. And the point that if you drive twice to drop your kid off because they can't drive their car, then we've doubled the number of trips. So, any further discussion on this?
I would answer David in the next vote. There's no point to discuss it this vote. I think that all of us have the right to learn more and come more prepared and change our mind, even if initially we said something else. And honestly, I didn't think that this remark about being buffered was in place. As I said it in the previous meeting, that I think we should tread carefully with this. I think that we should have, I think we will have enough to bring to town meeting about the budget, about the scope of the work. We do build into these contingencies. It will make the process a little longer, and we might not have it in time for the next year, but I think that we should get a popular vote of yes before we move on and spend more money on this project, especially because of the very emotional and very correct question about sustainability and stuff like this. I don't agree with them, but I agree that they exist, and I think we should bring it to town for the city before we spend more money. I think we can call it a
So,
question.
anybody else? So on the motion to expend general fund for the Kale study ahead of town meeting, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Motion doesn't carry. I think we need to understand what the amount would be that we would put in the capital article.
So you have to add that back into a total of $848,410.
So the total, so we would change the,
848, 410, you said. Thank you. Okay. Then,
So should I make a motion?
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out.
sure,
So
go ahead, do you want to make it?
No, please. You read it easier.
I have it right in front of me.
Yeah.
I would move that the Concord-Carlisle,
That's not it.
Right here.
Here, I'd like a motion that the town
It was
approves.
attached to letter A.
right, the article, but this is the motion, that's the article.
To determine whether the town will vote to approve 700.
848.
Right, thank you.
848, 410.
48, 410 of debt authorized by the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee for the design and construction of the parking lot or to take any other action relative thereto. That's the article. The motion then is that the town approves
48.
410 of debt authorized by the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee for the reconstruction. Wording problem here?
The design and construction.
For the reconstruction, comma, design and construction,
For the design and construction.
For the
Forget
design.
reconstruction,
Design and
for the
construction of the
design and
parking lot.
construction, sorry, of the parking lot.
So I have a question
I
before
second it.
we do that.
Sorry.
That says the town. That's
There's
the
something
motion
wrong
for
with
town
that
meeting.
motion, right?
Exactly.
Because it's the
That's why I was
share.
reading, okay. So,
The upper one is right? Because the upper one on the operating budget says 35 million blah, 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 as the town's
Yeah,
appointed
so that's the
share.
motion that's gonna go to each town.
right.
Right.
for the
Okay,
warrant.
each town gets its
So
own
this
little
is the
piece.
motion you need, what's on the screen right now is what your
Yeah.
motion is.
That's what I was starting to read.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
I will move,
Wait,
this is our motion,
848 gets divided. and
that
then
it's
there's two different
the
motions.
capital article as presented, and then I can read the capital article.
You can't, because the number, you can't
But I
put
can
numbers.
put my number, the new number.
Wait,
No, you
It's
can't,
different
because you have
for
to
each
do
town.
math on that.
No, this is how we do our regional articles, and then they,
5%.
Yeah,
Then you
the
create a
town,
warrant.
the two towns authorize and the split happens after.
yes,
Oh, is that
the
right?
same
is
language
right.
goes to both
Same
towns, and then the assessment drives what they actually
Right.
pay,
And they understand that?
very much so.
Yes.
That's the way it's always done.
Okay, so-
Let me try this and you'll see how it works. I move that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee votes to approve the CCHS capital article and motion as presented. That article reads, to determine whether the town will
Yes.
vote to approve $848,410 of debt authorized by the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee for the design and construction of the parking lot, or to take any other action relative thereto.
I second it.
Thank you.
discussion.
David, you've spoken before to your speculation about the town of Carlisle on this. Has your opinion changed?
No, my opinion has changed about the
Okay.
project. I don't think that, I don't think it's particularly on Carlisle's radar screen. It's not in the town,
Okay.
kids drive, everybody drives in Carlisle. So I actually don't think Carlisle will object to it.
So
I
does,
just personally object to it.
so it's going to be an interesting case for you to advocate for the school committee and speak for yourself as well.
I won't speak for myself. I'll
Okay.
speak for the committee if the motion carries. I just,
I don't mean
I,
that.
no, I think it's
Very well.
important. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
I'm a committee guy. I'm not gonna go against the will of the committee. I wouldn't speak on a personal level. I just think we're not being creative enough. That, I know we've gone through the arguments about carpooling and there's risks of this, risks of that. But I believe very strongly, and you don't sit in on, obviously, our Carlisle meetings, but it's a consistent theme with me, that we've got to be thought leaders. We have to, we're training the next generation of leadership in this world, right? Our kids have every privilege, and our kids are going to get the best of everything, and it's our duty to make them leaders. That's beyond everything else, and we haven't brought it up in the context of trips, but it's all there. It's the underpinning of many of the themes we have, and if we don't lead that way, we're not doing anything. So I've come around to, this issue was not on my radar screen, quite frankly. But once it was raised and I thought about it, I've come around to the practical, simple answer, which is compelling, is not the right answer. I believe we have to do the hard things. And so I believe we should take a year and commit to a greener solution to this problem. And I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's worth a process, and it's worth another year of juniors have to become seniors and sophomores will have to walk from town or whatever. I mean, I'm on a different plane, and people can disagree, but I'm gonna make that statement.
So can I say something that actually, I will agree with you first, that we should be thought leaders. And that I would like to say, let's change behavior before doing that. And 4 years ago, or was it 5? 4 years ago, I think we had this conversation, I said that exact same thing at this exact same table to a committee of mostly different people. And we said, give it a year, we said, give it 2 years. We've given it 4. We've tried to change behavior. But it's not just a matter of changing behavior of a few students. It's a community and it's the adults in the community. And to ask us and the administration at the high school to change the behavior of the community is just asking too much. when we all get here, we drive here. To get around town, we drive. The students who have their licenses are young adults, and their families are often counting on them to be a part of that family life and pull their weight, which often entails driving. For us to ask the administration to change that behavior of a community and family life is just not realistic. And we tried 4 years ago, and we've tried for 4 years and it hasn't worked. And so that's why I believe strongly that in order to address the stress that it's creating and the safety issues and the other things, we need to address this issue with Parkland.
I, against all odds, will agree with Heather and disagree with you, David. I think that what you say is extremely compelling, and it's right, as Heather said. I think that our job is to, first, we are a school committee and not select board. We have to think about the students, that's what we pay for. And the other thing, and we cannot actually deal here in this forum in changing behavior of families and the whole community as such. The other thing, I'm really committed, as you know, to sustainability, to conservation, but I think that we need to actually look at the practicalities, and the practicalities just don't add up. It just doesn't work. And it will not work for years to come. And we're creating stress, and we're creating tension, and I think that we have to, and I would gladly say to the town meeting, despite of the fact I didn't vote on an upfront money to give, but I think that we need this parking lot. I think that, as Heather said and as Wally said, this has been in the making for 4, 5, 6 years. It's not this committee and not this administration. It's across the board, and I think that we have to bring it. It's not our place. I actually think that we sit here as representative of the community and not only what we think, and I think the community, many of them want to actually have a say on it. So I think that we should bring it to the community to have a say and not to kill it here in the committee. I think we should bring it to the two communities, and the communities should vote on it.
My only comment about last year, I think that your presentation and the details were very clear. I don't think people voted this up or down at town meeting because they didn't understand. There was a lot of communication, a lot of, I don't think that was a problem. I don't think that's why it failed. So I fear that going back with essentially the same thing, and you and administration spending a lot of time on it, us, is just not the right thing to do. And if it fails twice, you cannot go back, in my opinion. So maybe taking a year off and demonstrating to the community that we have really tried everything might be a much better plan for eventually relieving the stress. Because this isn't a 10-year project to build a parking lot. It's I assume 2 to 3 months. So that's just my.
It's not, sorry, but for a second, it's not the same. We don't bring the same thing. We brought a double-fold project that I wasn't on the committee then, not that it's recently for any other, but I don't think that there's the same feeling about the road and the price of the road and the condition of the road as the necessity. This time we're bringing very clear one item to the people. The administration, we all spoke about it originally, the administration will work with all the sustainability groups to actually bring a package deal that will think about solution within.
But then we should know that package deal before we vote. That's the thing.
I think we need another year to demonstrate to ourselves and the community that we are seeking out other solutions. Yeah, we've had 5 years, but, and yes, culture change takes a while, we know that. What do we do with culture change? We try on new things, and if they work, we repeat them, and then we believe they are the right things. At first, we experiment until we prove that they work. part of culture change is looking at leaders, and we are elected leaders, and people watch what we pay attention to. Thanks to our superintendent, we've had many a conversation around sustainability here for the last year, so clearly it's on our radar. But this particular issue has not been on our radar. So I think of those 5 years, we have not devoted last year to supporting any creative problem solving around change at that high school vis-a-vis this problem. And I firmly believe that what you say is correct, that we don't get 3 tries at this. So I'm in favor of being more cautious, doing it right. And right for me means show more evidence that we are making visible our efforts to change behavior at that high school around bus ridership, around car usage. We've got scheduling conversations happening at that high school that might in fact factor into how kids use their time and therefore how they get transported. Regrettably, I don't think we can move ahead. I think the risk is far too great. We don't get a 3rd shot.
I beg to differ. I think that we will have a 3rd shot if ever needed. Things change, people change. Once again, I know I said it before, but I think that this committee for a long time thought, and this committee is not specific people, it's this committee, thought that the parking lot and the administration thought that the parking lot is a necessity for well-being of the students. And we've heard compelling evidence about the fact that it's good for the well-being of the students, safety of the students. I would urge to actually put this to a question to town meeting and not kill it in committee. I don't think it would be the right. The previous one that we voted was about how to do it, and it's financial, and it's our prerogative, and I think that this is a big question to the town, to the community to decide whether they want to change culture, whether this is the way to change culture, and I think we should bring it to the town meeting. That's, I think, the more democratic way in such a question.
I agree wholeheartedly with Yuval, and I add to that, that we had a very unusual situation last year. And parents can't come out 3 nights in a row to vote at town meeting. They've got kids at home, kids need support. We know this, and the way things fell last year, I think the full community of stakeholders who attend town meeting did not get a chance to vote on this article. And I think we should give them a chance. I also agree that, it may be foolhardy, but we can bring articles and the ideas back to town meeting a number of times. I believe this is very important. I believe it is time to do it. We have been talking about this since the 2nd year we were in the building. And because we've had experience, we underbuilt parking to begin with, and we know that because we know how many cars park there, and because we had to take the parking away from the landfill, we don't have parking adequate to support the school, and it bears out consistently. I think you've heard how I feel about the sustainability aspects of this. Would I like people to ride the bus? Absolutely. I've been singing that song since I came on the committee. We can't make people do that. We're in a wealthy community. Kids are given cars. Parents expect their kids to drive themselves to school. And as Heather said, we don't have a mechanism to change adult behavior in the community. And the community is fairly large because it's not just this year's parents. it's the parents that came before them and the parents that are coming after them. So if you've had a child go through school, you know, probably even odds that your child had a car and drove to school. So, you know, I think it's time to give this back to the town meeting with the adjustments we've made, and give the full community of stakeholders an opportunity to vote on this article. I think we are doing them a disservice if we don't do this. You know, that we have not talked a lot about the impact of the way our articles came up at last year's meeting, and it was very unusual. So, you know, I think that should be taken into account. Any further discussion?
Yeah, may I?
Yeah.
I've done nothing but talk about parking in 2.5 years since I arrived. I hear your wish for further sustainable conversations. Maybe I'm not communicating it well. I don't want to sit here and make you think something different's going to happen over the next year, because everything we have tried has hit roadblocks. So I'm a bit at a loss as to what else there is, and I think you know I'm as much a champion of sustainability as anyone here, and I think we're being those thought leaders for kids. I truly, truly do, and will continue to be. We're surveying the kids and hearing why they're driving. There's a lot of very good reasons in there that aren't going to get fixed with any option we try to come up with. I met with the leaders of the Sunshine Movement a month ago, and I posed this question to them. You know what their answer was? That isn't something we should be championing. In fact, we'd like to speak at town meeting about why we need parking. Those are our student advocates saying those two things shouldn't be competing with one another. We're buying some really nice, really great bike racks. The reality of what kids bring to school on a daily basis makes that very unrealistic for many of them, never mind the safety on the roads in Concord, and certainly from Carlisle. We've talked about incentives, we've talked about carpooling, we've been looking at where we can add and look at bus transportation. The most recent example of that is the hockey teams for the girls and the boys. A year ago, so few kids used the bus to get to practice right after school that we stopped funding it. It was a waste of money. We've just put it back for this season, and are going to try to rally the kids on the bus so that it's the way they want to get there. I don't think it's something we have control over, and I just want to say that so your expectations are very clear going into another year's worth of this conversation. I didn't think we'd be having this article go forward. When all this came up about what article we were going to move, I thought we were going to move the road, to be honest. This committee said, let's look at the parking, the kids need us to do that. We've just spent all that time doing all this research, and now we're going to move nothing, potentially. Maybe we could have moved the road if we'd been in a different place a month ago. I just want to be sure you're really clear that I don't think the sustainable part of this is a year's worth of work. I think it's 10 years worth of work. And a lot of other infrastructure questions that we don't have full say over. So I just want to be sure that we don't go into this expecting that a year from now we can sit and say something different happened and there's a different package to consider. Frankly, I'm not sure a year from now I'm going to be ready to support it again, because what I do know is coming, because we lived it last year, is that a divided committee or without 100% support, there is a competitive piece of sustainable versus kids' needs, and I'm going to say what I said to the building committee when it happened there. The kids need to be first in this forum. I believe in sustainability, but not at the cost of the kids. So I'm at a bit of a loss. If we don't move this forward, frankly, I'm really pretty concerned even if we do move it forward, because this conversation doesn't set the stage for a campaign to get a warrant article to pass in both communities. It just doesn't. I'm really struggling with where we're at, and hope that you're thoughtful in what you do next. And perhaps we move something so we don't miss the deadlines, and in January you revisit where we're at. Eva's here. We have 7 sets of input. If you vote it down tonight, there's no options left. If you vote it through tonight, January, you can pull it at any point. Perhaps we're not at a place where we're ready to make such a hefty decision.
Could we move it, in January and still meet the deadline?
No.
You'd have to meet again before January 10th in Concord, which
10th
right
is the
now we
deadline?
don't have a meeting. There's a Concord meeting the 7th, I believe.
There's no regional before the 21st.
No.
Could call a regional meeting.
Or if we put, remember, if we approve it, we can always pull it and not move it.
I would like to say a few things if possible. First of all, at least one person on the committee that knows me for many years and knows my kids know that my kids have never been even allowed to take the bus to the middle school. As a matter of fact, we live more than a mile away, and they'll never take a car to the high school. They always take the bus. It doesn't matter. So these are two, but I think that that's each family to its own, and we have to think about something else. So that's one thing. Be today fears of the superintendent. I'm sure that this committee, even if it's divided, once it will take a decision, everybody will work to run the decision to town meeting as a whole. And I call those of us that are not totally sure. I want to remind you that in a vote you can abstain. If you're not sure about you want to make a point that you're not sure, but still bring it to the decision of town meeting, you have a way to actually voice your opinion, your personal opinion, without actually jeopardizing the vote.
Can I ask a question about, is the town moving a middle school capital article?
Not now, no. So that, the timing on a middle school capital article, which I think does have to be part of this conversation, would be a special town meeting likely this fall. We're going to talk more on that tomorrow morning, actually.
So there's no other, are there any other school capital?
No,
Not at this town
No.
meeting, no.
no.
Even according to the accelerated, it was late July.
Yeah, it's
And
certainly a
accelerated
special
would
town
never
meeting.
happen.
It's not
Right.
aligned with the annual.
It's September, October, maybe even later.
I want to say I'm perfectly content with the difficulty we're having because it speaks to what's going on the planet. I mean, this is a perfect example of what's happening everywhere we look. And I do think we can distinguish kid needs from sustainability needs, but I think that gap is closing pretty darn fast, and I think kids know it. And so,
And adults know it.
and adults know it. So we didn't run for office for easy around this table. We knew that this kind of evening was going to happen, where we are pitting multiple goods against each other, trying to find the best one. So again, I make no apologies, nor do I think this committee should make any apologies for 11th hour robust debate. That's what you do. That's the art of politics. And what's the art of politics? It's the art of hashing out how to allocate resources and then walk out of the door together and make it work. I think we're doing that.
Can I bring something up? This is a rescheduled meeting and Ava couldn't be here. We normally don't take input from people who aren't here. This is unusual because it is a rescheduled meeting. She did send us something.
Sure.
I would read it if
That's
the
fine.
committee agrees.
Sure.
Just context, is she observing and weighing in on tonight's meeting, or is this independent?
She has a planning, a different meeting. She's at a-
Planning meeting, town planning meeting.
So she said this earlier today, not
Thank you.
having
Thank
watched
you.
this.
Okay.
So, dear school committee, in my absence due to the time conflict with another committee meeting, I would like to share my voice in this email format. I support funding of the design work with current year appropriations for the high school parking lot. I feel it would be a disservice for the school committee members to hold up planning of the project as we have concrete deadlines and timeframes to meet in order to complete the parking time for the next school year. A few things to consider are the permitting process is time consuming already. Parking construction has to happen during the summer vacation. And the town meeting to vote on the project is scheduled for April 27th. There is not much time at all. This project has already gone through an extensive feasibility study and council review vetting to make sure there are no surprises. Gale, the company hired, is not a newcomer to this process and complexities of the project requirements, as few of us new members are, but company has been working on this project from the beginning. I feel the actual design work completed in time for the town meeting will allow us to go through additional review channels at the town level, get accurate cost information coming from bids, so committee and townspeople can make an educated decision whether to fund the final parking project. Thank you, Evan Mustafi.
I have a procedural question. From what Eva wrote, it's very obvious that she would have voted for the previous motion, but that would have failed because of a 4-3. It's very obvious what she thinks about this project. Is there a procedural way that we can give today 48 hours and meet just for this vote on Friday?
No,
You can't do Friday.
Can't do Friday, we
We
can
do
do Monday or
Yeah,
Tuesday.
that's next week.
I'm fine.
Why don't you just append it to the, you have a meeting on the 6th or something?
Well, we'd have
It's
to
not
make
a
it,
regional.
yeah, we'd have to make it a regional.
Make it a regional.
And it's
Plenty of time.
just, I mean,
I mean,
Why-
make one
can
piece
we
of
do
it, one
Monday?
little piece of it.
we don't know if Eva can make it.
Well,
So,
I mean, the point, I guess, is on the practical basis, you have till the 10th?
Yes,
There's time to schedule a meeting.
Only
make
because
sure
town
that-
meeting's late in Concord, so we have another week than usual.
so, I'm assuming, I mean, we're certainly split right now with the people that are here. Seems, I don't think anybody's opinion's been swayed, kind of like Congress.
Dave?
I'm hearing and seeing heads nod, but I don't want to presume that
we have a motion on the
we have
floor.
a motion on the table.
Withdraw it.
Somebody can withdraw that motion. But we can.
I think it's important because at the end of the day, there is a split decision, 3-3 apparently. We don't want to leave it at that. There is it's a 7-people committee. It's a big decision that was around for years. I think we should give it a chance in the full committee. I would make a motion to withdraw the motion that was made about this article.
Well, I think it-
Withdrawn by
I-
whoever made it.
I
Yes.
made
Heather
the
made the
motion, so
So you would need to withdraw it.
I could withdraw it if we're all in agreement that we're going to make the, what is it, the 7th a joint meeting and vote on this then. Before we do that, can we ask you, Lori, is that realistic? Is that, if we put this off until the 7th, is that still in time to make the 10th deadline? Is there anything that you need to know before the 7th? Okay, it doesn't, I'm just trying to think, are there any other ramifications that we're not thinking of punting on this vote?
And do we have to vote to withdraw, or you just withdraw? I don't think.
I think I can just withdraw my motion. But before I do that, I just wanted to
Assuming you can make that
understand.
date.
I assume, my recommendation is to make sure you put out a meeting and make sure all 7 can make it, right?
Yeah. So it might be a different day.
It might be a different day, but it could be that day just for a short, period, right?
So what's your opinion of what we,
Fine.
Court?
Given what we know, what we're saying, if we do this, is that we're going to opt for full committee inclusion of every member, and the likely consequences are we'll change what would have been the outcome tonight.
We don't really know because
I
people
said
don't-
it probably, yeah, from what we know, and, so I'll fall on the side of full membership for the decision.
Okay, the risk, of course, is if we can't get everybody that night, then we have to find a night
Before
to do it before the 10th.
That's a
which
smaller
is
risk than what we have now. What's the result of a split 3-3 vote?
It does
doesn't
not pass.
Doesn't
I
carry.
I think we should bring it to the full committee.
Okay, then I
It's
will,
really is, sorry, I wouldn't usually, but I actually think it's something that really, a question that was around for years. And town meetings voted on it and stuff, and I don't think we should, I think we should do the responsible thing and bring it to the whole meeting. Especially because it was a last minute change between yesterday.
Okay, I will-
snow date meeting, I'm more inclined toward this than I might be otherwise.
I rescind my motion.
Okay, so,
All right, Erin and I will be in touch to get the date for the joint meeting.
Right.
Obviously, if the 7th
Hopefully the
works,
7th.
that's easier.
We can just do it at the front end?
Yep.
so well, that'll be the only thing on it,
Executive
okay?
session as
It's a
well.
con.
And the other meeting. I can't promise the rest of the meeting will be as much fun as this was,
Okay.
but
But maybe we can take a break now.
No, let's finish.
no, let's finish up here.
David would like you to at least get through the regional part, I think.
David wants to
Take
get
a
up,
break, yeah,
wants
take
to
a
make
break.
sure his car starts, it's gonna be about 2 degrees when we get down here. So, I'm hoping that C is the vote to approve the budget.
There's 2 Cs, but the first C is.
2 Cs, 2 Cs. First C.
Mine there.
Is there? That's weird.
Anyway, okay,
Okay,
yeah.
so for David, the first C, for the rest of us, C. Can I have a motion that the Concord-Carlisle Committee votes to approve the Concord-Carlisle Regional School District fiscal year 21 budget article and motion as presented?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, you got it.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
I'll say either.
I'd like to propose an amendment. Do I ask for a second at this point?
Oh, second.
Well,
Can we
so
know
what
what
is
the
yet
amendment
left?
is? Can we know what the amendment
You
is?
certainly may. So what I'm asking is that we qualify the approval in support of the budget with language along these lines, that the fiscal 2021 bus leasing called for in the transportation vehicle replacement budget item shall follow school committee review of the current replacement plan and review of strategies through which vehicle replacements in the future may conform with Town of Concord greenhouse gas emission reduction goals as adopted by the 2017 town meeting. End quote. I've got hard copies here. I've tried to leave the language as loose as I can in terms of demands that we'd be putting on either people who provide information from the Transportation Department to the Director of Finance or Director of Finance to the Superintendent. This is not intended as a make-work exercise, but rather to stay current, if not ahead of, the growing community conversation about our replacement plans. I don't think this will change anything we're doing. I think that costs and availability and need for student transportation will dictate that we move ahead just as called for in the budget, but I do think it's our responsibility to make public this kind of information as part of our process.
So I'll second the motion, the amendment, excuse me.
Discussion.
Okay, so we're discussing just the amendment now.
Hmm.
Sorry, I'm just reading it again. And
Please.
If I understand
Detail.
right what you actually say, just for me to recap what I understand in this, you want us to keep the budget as is,
Correct.
but during a meeting later on in January to have a presentation maybe from the Assistant Superintendent Business Manager about the 10 years plan of renewing. Is that what I understand right?
10-year plan, the lack of options to the plan as presented now.
And you want to link it to the electric buses discussion?
Mm,
No.
No,
Okay.
no, rather what I want is more public evidence in front of this committee, therefore more public evidence in front of the town, or the towns, as to why this is necessary and why we're prepared to put more diesel vehicles on the road.
Why not keep the ones we have longer? Is that the question?
That'll be part of the report, is we've got to learn about how these decisions are made and how we squeeze life out of these vehicles and how we try to maintain them such that we reduce emissions. We're going to learn a little bit. I don't want to do any, I don't want to enter into a domain where we don't belong,
Mhm.
but I do think that we represent the community in these expenditures, and I think we have clear evidence people want to know about the necessity for these expenditures, and we have the forum for that to happen.
I think it's an informational request, I think.
I have a couple questions on how it would work. So you're saying the budget item shall follow school committee review?
The leasing, no, it's the leasing follows.
Oh, the leasing, sorry,
The
called for in
leasing
that budget, okay, got it.
follows.
Follow school committee review, okay, so that leads to the next question. What does that, and I'm not quite sure what we'd be committing to here, so what
You're
does
committing
that,
to listening, it doesn't say you approve anything.
okay, but what does that review or report, then in that case, if it's listening, is this what we're asking, it sounds like Wally and Cynthia and David to do in terms of working with some other entities in town to figure out a long-term plan? Or is this asking the administration to
Well,
bring us a
the-
report that we haven't discussed?
I'll answer it this way. I would like to make public the evidence that we don't have options for these 4 diesel replacements for fiscal '21, number 1. Number 2, I would love to hear a high-level hypothetical conversation around strategies. Why does it have to be hypothetical? Because the industry is changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
Grants are unknown. But we do know that costs are significant and availability is highly questionable. So I don't mean this to be misconstrued as something that would lead to a strategy this school committee adopts. No, I just
No.
want to hear about strategies, period. What are
Right.
people thinking about? Where might this go? Now, I understand that if you did this 6 months later, it wouldn't be quite the same story. But nonetheless, I think it's contingent upon us to hear what we think we know now.
But this is linked to the budget line. So the only thing that actually can happen, linking into the budget line, otherwise it's the work of Cynthia, David and Wally, that will take longer than we can actually amend the budget. So if I understand right, when we link it to the budget line, we want to hear from Jared, why do we have, after 10 years, to pull those 2 buses up? Why can't we actually extend their life another couple of years until we find a solution to it? And if we decide that this is at all a possibility, we can amend the budget down, which is always a welcome thing, rather than up. So I think that we vote, I have no problem with the amendment, I think it's good. We can vote the budget and hear from Jared about this option and then link it later on to the larger discussion that will come later on. Am I?
There is no link built into this, no. It might inform some link later on, but I'm not speculating that yet.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I still have one more question, which is just the logistics of this. In general, when we vote a budget, it's to approve a budget. I've never seen an amendment in wording form like this. What does that mean? We then, the budget that we approve, and this isn't for or against the amendment here, I'm just
Sure,
trying to understand
sure.
logistically. Generally, we approve a budget and then that's what is brought to town meeting. It's what's put into the warrant article and brought to town meeting. So does this wording then appear somewhere in
Would
the
be-
budget?
So I think what we would need to do is check with the moderator and probably an attorney as to, we do have another meeting. So we could do that work, I think. It's not saying to Carmen and
Well, I
citizens.
feel like this would be risky to not vote our budget tonight.
No, I'm saying we could vote it tonight.
Okay.
And we could, couldn't we amend it at the next meeting or rescind the amendment if it isn't legal or inappropriate or something like that before we submit the warrant article?
Or
Does
if we want
it
to-
do just the same thing? Let me just ask you a question, sorry. Just because of the logistics of an amendment and what, if that's even a thing.
Keep
I
going,
mean,
yeah, I'm fine.
does it make more sense to make a statement like this at the same time as we approve the budget, but it's not an actual amendment because we're not sure how that
I take it a
works?
step further. I think that the only, if I, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only immediate possible change to the budget, except for the declaration, will be if we will hear from Jared that we can extend the life of this bus for another year while we're deliberating the options of electric or something. If this will be the case, we can always amend down the budget that we voted for. So maybe we will, if you agree, not do the amendment, but the superintendent will, bring Jared with this report of the options for a meeting before that we'll have time to actually do something about it. Is that something that you?
I will be very happy if this school committee and the administration both is obligated to have this information as best it can be put together by Jared as to why there are no options for fiscal '21 other than 4 diesel buses to this district, to that district. I think it's a conversation that has to go in the public domain right here and has to give the public and the school committee confidence that he's scrubbed all the alternatives. I suspect he has. This is
Yeah.
not about Jared.
No,
This is
no,
not
no.
about his homework.
No, may I?
Yeah,
Please.
that was my next question.
I have 2 points. I think the first is, if we're gonna present to you, which we're happy to do, and I frankly feel ever since all of this conversation started, that's been the missing piece. We were solicited without having had a chance to share the work we're doing. We are frankly the leading district in the state in terms of electric bus usage. We have Cambridge's bus here right now. There's only 3 in the state. Cambridge needed repairs. Our guys are working on it. I feel like we missed a whole major step here. And I think, Cord, I hear that's, I think, what you're trying to bring to attention while we share our ongoing commitment. Frankly, and Jared's gonna say the same thing when he's sitting here, it's the capital outlay costs that are the problem. If we could get electric buses for something reasonable, we'd be actively pursuing it. We are in a grant waiting process right now. We've applied for every grant that's come up. We will continue to do so. Everything's taking longer than we thought. I expect we're getting a second bus, and it'll be a year before we even get it. So there's a whole big missing piece of information that hasn't happened to this community. I'm a little surprised because we've now had Senator Barrett out here, we've had Representative Gouveia out here. The rest of the state is looking to us as leaders, and I feel like we just got put in a little bit of a reactive mode, and I would really like to slow that down and turn that.
And I think this does that.
I think it does too. I am very concerned about it being attached to the budget, though. I have never seen, it puts a conditional piece, at least in perception, to the
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
I think we need a clean message to town meeting. You just got a budget that can be in under guideline. Let's please not distract people from that.
Yeah.
If you want to find another way to say to this community, we believe in it and we're going to show you how and why and work with you on this, let's do it. But please don't distract from what I think could get lost in translation with just the fact it's complicated and
So
we don't know if it's even legal at the moment.
So if I might, I agree with you, and what I'm trying to prevent is another kind of distraction with the assumptions that this district is going for an easy repeat of last year because that's what we do. We replace buses. No, I want to have the same kind of conversation we're having with our state reps and with other districts who are seeking us out for inspiration and information.
You know, and
We've
just
got
a
to
thought
replace
is
the conversation that's happening in the community with a very informed conversation here. And I trust that Jared has much of this already at his fingertips.
no, I know that he doesn't,
Yeah.
so I think that's my other timeline piece.
Okay.
We can talk very high level, big picture very quickly, but if we're gonna do it right, which we're gonna wanna do, we don't have it all at our fingertips. My recommendation is you don't attach it to the approval of the budget, but in January, let's talk about what that vehicle is to show our commitment, make a plan for sharing of the information. Town meeting's a great forum to get more information out, I completely agree with you there. And we can build it into the presentation and the discussion of why we're doing what we're doing, but I'm worried about the language piece being
I'm happy to
attached.
pull this. I'd like to have a report before the kids go on February vacation.
And once we talk more on what you want in the report, we can give you feedback as to what that looks like,
May I?
what's
Can I-
doable in that amount of time.
Do you have anything? I appreciate that because I do feel like encumbering the budget with an amendment is a big deal. and I'd prefer not to do it. I also think we've made it pretty clear that we want to explore much more than what this requests, which is, let's talk as a town that's made a commitment through Article 51 to sustainability and emissions reduction, about how we can really make an effect on that. We know that the industry is not going to be geared up to provide enough electric buses to us that the buses these are going to replace will not be costing us way more money than we should be putting into all buses. We are at the end of a long process of replacing buses that started when I think either my first or second year on the committee, because we really became building the high school
Oh, I know.
in a recessionary
We're
period
gonna
of time.
outsource the buses.
We, in the bus,
Yeah.
conversation about outsourcing buses, we really hindered
Oh, I know,
the efficacy of our bus fleet.
I know.
And this is finishing off that process.
But we
I
have to tell
am
that
all
story.
for, I mean,
Yeah.
I am absolutely all for a process of community engagement around this. And it has to be community engagement. Because the only way in the next decade that we're going to be able to afford electric buses is likely to be if we are in concert with the light board and utilizing the electric buses as storage.
Yes.
That can be used to shave peak at the
Summer.
hot summer
Yeah.
days when we're pegging our rate. And those, I don't think we get good solutions and a good plan together by town meeting. Just don't see how you do that, there's no time. So what we would be coming with for this, I think, because I think it's unfair to ask the finance director to effectively take all of that work on himself.
Well, let's
To
discuss it at the
provide
next
us a
meeting.
report
Sounds
about
like
what we
you're
already
withdrawing
know.
your amendment. Let's discuss how to
But,
move forward in a reasonable way for our.
Well, I'm even questioning the notion of, I mean, I think what we could ask Jared to do, and I hope this would be enough, is to come back with the bus inventory and show what we've done over the last years to get to where we are and what this will put us, where this will put us. And recognize that the buses we're putting into service in the fall will likely still be with us at their life's end as we're transferring to another. And this is about, efficient, safe buses. These are more efficient buses than the ones we would retire as a result of bringing them in. They won't have the maintenance expenses. I think we could have him come back and show us that, but I really think this is, I believe this is, would be, as far as benefit and a show of what we want to do, superseded by the notion of exploring a bigger conversation among town members, and I don't think we need to put, we have been spending the entire fall asking the administration to do things that they were not planning to do this year. And it's taken a lot of time. And I really don't think this is appropriate given what we already know. I think we know the answers to this. So I believe we should ask for a discussion about the bus inventory and go about what we're talking about with the group and not expect the finance director to come to us with any detailed
There might be a
discussion
happy
about electric
medium.
buses.
What we could pull together quickly is what we do know easily, which is how we're managing the bus inventory and how we're managing the electric buses and our story of some significant failure at the beginning of this endeavor, and then the recuperation and all of that. I think that would be an easy, manageable starting point for us to put that story together for you in January. And then you can help us know what else you think we need, and then we can mutually agree on a time frame for that. But at least then the story could be told, because I really think that's a huge part of the discussion.
I think
As a
that's,
baseline.
I think that's what people are asking for.
Yeah.
I think this speaks to it, and I think it's more than appropriate to replace any misinformation about any casual decision to replace buses with
Sure.
evidence that it's a very informed decision. I assume it is, and if it takes 10 minutes to hear that, I think that's more than appropriate. I think it's necessary.
Right, and I think also if we could have that as an article in our annual budget book every year, talking about the state of the fleet.
Yeah,
I mean,
we list it.
I'm not asking
We
for,
can do more.
you know, it's just a quick chart and a little narrative and just so.
And I agree with what Court just said. You know, I think it should be focused on where we are with the current bus
Right.
fleet.
So
Tell
we
our,
agree?
tell our story that we haven't had a chance to do.
So
Okay,
the
so have you-
amendments
I already
withdrawn.
have withdrawn.
Withdrawn,
Yes,
okay.
I have.
Any discussion about the budget? We come back to the budget.
To the budget
The
itself
motion
now.
article, is there any further discussion about the budget?
Well, I think we've commended all the
Yes.
players in the formation, but I think we can echo that it was again, from ground up, careful and thorough, and I think we have the evidence in front of us. So, Lori, if you convey our thanks,
Mhm.
please.
Absolutely.
I think we can all echo that.
To-
It's a long process, a lot of work. Fortunately, we have a very adept finance director who loves
Yes.
numbers and spreadsheets.
And brought this
Budgets.
in, let's just say how amazing it is to have brought it in $150,000 under the finance committee guideline, their initial guideline, that's incredible. And it shows real care and thought that went into the creation of this budget.
So,
Thank you.
So we have the motion, do we now dive into wording on the article, am I correct?
no, we already have the motion.
We already have the.
Yep.
Wording of
We already have the
article.
motion.
Take the votes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item is vote to approve the case agreement.
So I'll give you a high level view of the changes that have occurred here. I sit on the board of directors, we meet regularly. What we have had happen over the last couple of years is some changes in membership.
Mhm.
And so really all we're asking, and we've agreed upon this as a board, so that we're always working in our own best interest and taking care of each other. That is part of the collaborative mindset. So if there's a couple of pieces here that really are about notice of that plan to withdraw, and most of this is being driven because of changes of plan to engage in the transportation portion of case, based on how the formula works, which would be a whole 2-hour presentation in and of itself. It has impact when people come in and out. So right now, the language, there is no language, and thankfully, the districts that have withdrawn have gracefully agreed to stay on a year to just give us the chance to know what's gonna happen to the finances. So what page am I on? Page 7, there's a recommendation that if you're withdrawing completely, it be a 24-month notice, and that's because of the transportation piece. The formula is based on actual counts of kids riding 2 years prior to today, and that's a long story, but
Mhm.
that's why the 24-month notice is there.
24 instead of 26?
6.
Thank you. Okay.
The biggest change, if you go to page 10, is the language we created around transportation per se. So I won't read all of that, and assume you've had a chance to do that. But it tries to put some structure to how that process will go and how it will be communicated, and with enough notice that we can all plan for it. One final piece that was, we had to add the category of pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions to the non-discrimination clause, just to stay current with the law.
Okay.
So those are the recommended changes. We are all bringing this to our committees for approval, so we have an agreement that is in sync with each other.
Good.
I did put it on for approval as a first reading. If you feel you need more time, we can move it to January, but I didn't know if that would be the case or not, so.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go for it.
It's the Concord-Carlisle School Committee and Concord School Committee vote to approve the case agreement as presented. And I make the motion for both committees.
Second for both?
Discussion.
Is there, so there are members who opt out of the transportation piece? They just do the school piece? Or
The programmatic piece, yeah, the special
how do they get the
education.
kids there?
Some of them use other transportation, there's other collaboratives, there's other providers.
But you, if you're a member town and you don't opt out of transportation, but you don't actually transport any kids, do you owe? You don't know, because none of your kids are.
So the way the formula is all done in two separate categories, so all the transportation's under one umbrella, and all of special ed programming is under another. What the members contribute, so it's a way in which we all are collaboratively creating and hosting. Big portion of CASE is the hosting of programs in the public schools, and the space that's attached to that. So we don't actually, at CASE, we don't actually pay a membership dues or anything like that. And in some cases, we get a better rate, and in other cases, we don't. Special ed we're really looking at the tuitions and doing some adjusting to the tuitions. So right now, it's actually that the CASE districts don't have a benefit over the others. However, in transportation, it's all based on the number of kids that are riding. And what we've developed, and the reason I would not ever look to touch this, is over time, because of the formula we're using, I believe it's a cost-effective formula. You can tell that we're not all in agreement on that, which is why people are making different decisions. Plus, we have a really intimate relationship with a really trusted vendor. So as things happen, as needs change, we can make a call on a dime and we're able to get support and service.
Yeah, I wasn't criticizing that anyway. I'm saying if I'm a member district and I just don't send any kids on those CASE buses, whether I opt in or out, I don't pay. It's based on children.
Right, because it's based on
Yes,
actual
yes,
ridership.
correct.
So can school committees or school administrators say to those towns, you're not allowed to ride on the CASE bus, or they have to withdraw to make that happen? I'm trying to understand who withdraws and why.
And I can't answer all those questions,
Okay.
those decisions are being made back at the other
Yeah, other
districts. I know the
districts, not ours.
transportation piece for two of the smaller districts have had what they felt were cost analysis of what it was costing to use the CASE provider, and decided there was another option. I feel very
So
strongly.
maybe they have to opt out to make sure that nobody says, I have a right to ride the CASE bus or whatever. It doesn't matter. I think
Yeah,
it's late.
so it's not,
Okay, I got it.
it's hard to explain in a quick minute. Yeah.
But what it does is it enables a district to leave the transportation side of the CASE agreement and doesn't leave CASE high and dry with a sudden change.
Exactly, or member districts who are still transporting kids, because it's a proportional share that we pay based on the head count.
That's the whole issue here.
It's the whole issue here, so if a district withdraws, it can shift the proportion, and we just need to have time to know that that's coming.
This
Does that
strikes,
help?
this strikes me as housekeeping.
It's
largely,
housekeeping
yeah.
to
And you're in
reflect
favor,
current
you think
things.
these changes make
Absolutely.
sense, it certainly seems to make
Absolutely.
sense.
Absolutely.
I got it.
All right.
We have a motion and a second, do we not?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
All in favor for?
Aye,
Aye.
for both.
For both.
We'll do
All
them
in favor for
separately.
the regional.
He's doing for the
Aye.
region.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
sorry. And all in favor for Concord?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Lori.
No, thank you, that's helpful that we've taken care of that.
No,
Great, oh yeah, that's,
I've got it here.
sorry, mine's not pulled up.
Can I make another
We have a motion that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee, I guess this is
Oh,
straight
it's
up
just-
Concord-Carlisle.
It's,
Concord-Carlisle School Committee votes to approve a $150 donation from Ladders Environmental to the Concord-Carlisle Regional School District. The letter from Ladders reads, in appreciation of the many clients we are privileged to service at Concord and Carlisle, pleased to make this donation to the school department. Ladders Environmental is a lawn, tree, and shrub care company specializing in science-based environmental environmentally sound approaches and attentive customer service. Attributing to your school department is a way we can give back to Concord and Carlisle communities for considering us the company of choice. I always hope that in supporting education, other companies will join us. Please use these funds in any way you would consider appropriate.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think that they are to be commended for their support, and I think that they would receive no more or less consideration than any other bidding agency.
Of course, absolutely. With thanks.
And I think that, as I read that, I think they were just saying, members of the community,
Yes.
making them company of choice, not asking us to do that.
I just want to go on the record.
Yes.
Pro forma.
Yes.
And thank you to Ladders. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, can we take all the policies as a group?
I would recommend we do a
Consent.
consent agenda on the policies. Rather than me read through them, are there anybody would like to pull out of the consent agenda?
I think that we presented it last time, we just want to remind everybody, JICJ is to be removed.
Yes.
Vote is to remove. Not to
So,
amend it.
So everything's on the consent
Yep.
calendar except that one.
Let's
Well,
pull up, let's pull up just so it's.
So I would say we vote on it as it reads, which the next to that
Okay.
is policy to be removed.
That sounds good.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
we're clear, yep.
Fair enough.
So I make a motion that the Concord-Carlisle school committees vote to approve policies as presented, including the one to be removed.
Second,
For both?
yes,
For
for
both.
both.
Any discussion? All in favor for the region?
Aye.
All in favor for Concord?
Aye.
Aye.
And take a motion to adjourn the region.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Or adjourned at the region. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, do you want to take a vote then? Did you do all in favor? You didn't take a vote to adjourn.
All in favor?
aye.
Got us no end. All right, we are back in session with the Concord School Committee. Just a couple items left. I think we can be efficient. We have the CPS FY21 budget. We've looked at it many times. Just as a reminder, remember, while we came in $150,000 below the guideline for the region, we came in coincidentally about $150,000 above
Wait,
the guideline for
skipped over nine.
CPS.
Wait,
Sorry.
enrollment?
What?
Did we skip
No,
out?
no, because we
No,
want an
enrollment
action
is
item,
afterwards.
it's discussion.
This is old business.
We have under old business,
Oh.
CPS FY21 budget. So I'm just doing a
Sorry.
review of where we are and where we've been on the budget.
Yeah, good.
We
Thank
came
you.
in initially $150,000 above the Finance Committee's initial guideline. When they
The math.
convened again, they made some math corrections and adjusted their guideline up by 50,000 based on a math adjustment, but did not want to adjust further. So we are at this point 100,000 over the
Got it.
Finance Committee guideline.
And in percentage, it's a neglectable,
What's that?
in percentage, it's a neglectable.
It's a small percentage,
Mhm.
certainly. Their guideline was we're at 3 point, in terms of the percent increase,
No, it was a very,
it's a very small percent, the difference.
We're at 3.5, they're at about 3.3 probably, so it's very
it was
small.
Maybe we
It's-
do some- I don't know.
It's not a full
Smaller.
percent, yeah,
No.
it's
Yeah.
very small.
was
It's-
smaller than this.
Right, it's a very small difference. Anything else that you wanna
No, I
add?
don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, we have the vote in a minute, so
Okay.
we'll discuss it more then, just wanted to kind of
Yep, that's fine.
bring it up now as the old business to review. Okay, so let's do the new business elementary school enrollments first quickly,
Sure.
or not quickly if you.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things to talk about here. So what I tried to present for you is sort of the state of the union of the 3 elementary schools. I know I've referenced this before. We do need to formally commit to what our plan's gonna be as we go into the second half of the school year. So you can see the enrollments at the 3 elementaries and the discrepancy there. Most of that actually being driven by decisions we made for all of the Boston kids and all of the Muse apartment complex to go to Alcott. Having waited it out, which I mentioned to you, I wondered how it would balance, and it's not balancing. So it does seem prudent to start to look at the decisions we made and decide if we need to revise those. The Boston piece is a bigger discussion of significant proportion. It's in a strategic plan, and one that is purposely in the later part of the 5 years of the strategic plan. You know, our history at the apartment complex has been varied based on enrollments at the schools. So it's just within the last, I guess it's been a full school year now, we've essentially weaned out of sending those kids to Thoreau, and they're all at Alcott, but that was pretty split as we shifted kids to Alcott. So we've used it as our swing because redistricting everybody else is really significant. And
Right.
I think we've done right by families in that we keep siblings together. We let them grandfather through so they spend their whole time at the elementary school where they start.
Sure.
So I feel pretty strongly that given how challenging redistricting is, we're doing the best of all options. So I would propose that from September of 2020 and beyond, or kids coming in and registering over the summer for September of 2020, that unless they have a sibling already at Alcott, that we would begin to enroll families at Willard and gradually make our way through. So what I gave you the data. In last fall, we enrolled 14 kindergartners into Alcott. It averages somewhere between 5 and 14, but it's a strong average of 10. The 5 is oddly low. So what would probably happen, knowing some of how this would play out, that if it were to be 10, some of those kids are going to have older siblings at Alcott and wouldn't
Correct.
go to
Right.
Willard.
Right.
So it's going to be a nice gradual
very
entry.
gradual.
But
So you're saying only
older
new
students.
kindergarten registrations?
No, I would say
Oh, sorry.
everyone who moves in, but
New
even
registrations,
that's not
okay.
there's some transition there, but it's not a mass exodus
No,
and
no,
inflow
but you could say
that would overwhelm.
You could say another 5 to 10 max.
Yeah, it's
So
all
between the
doable.
kids of siblings, it's probably going to be not more than 15.
I would say not more than 15 across all the grade levels.
So just for me to be sure.
Which we
that I
can
understand
certainly
right.
handle.
A family that has a kid in Thoreau, as
Alcott.
long,
No,
at
Alcott.
Alcott, as long as he's in Alcott, every sibling.
Yes.
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 What about a family that had a kid in Alcott, he's now in a middle school, and they want the sibling that now coming in to go to Alcott?
Yeah, I think if there's no one currently at Alcott, I want them to go to Willard.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's a sibling at Alcott, that certainly we want to
Yeah.
honor that.
All right.
I have to say that bus ride, because I'm very familiar with living near Willard, and that bus ride going the back way will be a lot shorter
No
than going
question
across
on that.
town. I mean,
It's Alcott.
that's
No
the thing, I
question.
know people who go from Muse to, and I would not wish that on,
Yeah.
even if you're not stopping,
Right.
it's kind of,
Yeah.
so this will be
It's
a
a long
much
ride,
lighter. I always say, well, once you get to the middle school, they can go that back way,
Yeah.
and it'll be much better, so I think this is gonna be, I know it's gradual, but I think,
There's a benefit.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So
So-
my only, oh, go ahead.
I'm thinking back to when we moved everybody to Alcott, which was a conscious decision to move all the incoming Metco students to Alcott, because we felt we could provide a better program for them there for some of the needs that they have coming to us that were unique, and to allow for, kids they may consider their peers because they're riding the bus with them all day, to be together during the day. Can you talk about the change in thinking around that? I know that was done before you got here.
Yeah, so I'm not
And we're
suggesting
sharing.
anything on Boston at this point.
No.
Boston's all gonna stay at Alcott. We need a much more significant
yeah, that's a big
review process
That's a huge
before we
decision.
consider whether that's
Okay, so
gonna change. This is only the kids coming from the apartment complex. that I'm proposing
Okay, so
start to filter into
Okay,
Willard.
I kind of missed that, I guess from I just see METCO as well as students.
We're just giving you the-
Would you,
That was just
would-
Okay.
Outside of the
would-
regular.
are
Thank
you,
you.
are you actually looking in such a review, into such a review in the future?
I think you should.
It's in the strategic,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, it's in the
Yeah.
strategic plan, it was
Because-
very highly spoken of
Because, you
as
know,
we
it's one of those
solicited.
things that's
feedback?
very compelling reasons to do one way and
Sure.
very compelling reasons to do the
Yes,
other way.
so it's in
For
the later-
community, not
It's in
only
the
for
strategic plan
income,
and
but-
will be parts of the later years of the 5 years, which means it's another year or so out.
Good.
We absolutely are gonna review and look at what's working and what isn't.
All right.
So that, my only question relates to that, knowing that a few years down the line, given that review, another change could happen. If we're switching the Muse students over to Willard going forward, do we expect that to have to change again if we
I
then
don't, you have
spread
a,
out
you have a
Medco kids?
70 student difference
Right,
right
it
now,
doesn't
there's
seem
a
like it.
lot of room here still,
Okay.
yeah.
I only, I remember my first couple of years on the committee, we had 500 at Willard. So it can shift
It can,
unpredictably
It-
sometimes, and so we don't know,
fluid,
of course.
So
of course.
Thoreau had the biggest enrollment then?
Yeah.
When the change was made?
When the change was made, yes. And then we had a couple of years when Willard was high.
Because Willard was too
And then
high.
Alcott has been growing, right, exactly.
Alcott is
So
significantly
I only
lower.
just want to put it out there, obviously
Absolutely.
we have to know that another shift could come in a few years if we decide to change the way we do Metco. But that's, if we split them among the three, isn't
which
huge
isn't a
numbers
lot of
either.
kids,
But actually,
which
I
is
think
why
it's-
one of the negatives of doing that.
But we're not
Right.
talking about that
That's
tonight.
population, that's the nature of the beast, those things change.
Yeah, it is,
Into
absolutely,
enrollment,
yeah.
they're going to- And at the end of the day, it goes down to the well-being of the students, because if there is an overpopulated school in one place and underpopulated, it goes to
Right,
well-being,
yeah.
and that's what we have.
Yeah, this makes sense, thank you for
Yes.
bringing it.
No, thank you, I think it's the right decision that, for the moment,
Yeah.
and based on what we know for facts and what we know for predictions, so,
Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And you don't need anything from us on that.
I
You're
don't, no.
just gonna move forward. Okay, great.
I'm very happy to make a motion.
Then,
There's no motion.
go for it.
Ah, there is.
Well,
the next
we're
thing?
on to the next thing now. We're on to action items, so yes, I do
Hey.
need a motion.
I thought we were back at, we're at
That
the-
that the Concord School Committee votes to approve the CPS FY21 budget motion and an article as presented.
And
Second.
the amount of, can you give the amount?
I can,
The amount of, if you scroll down,
an
it's,
amount of 40,782,874 or any other sum for the following necessary and expedient purposes of the public school of the town for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
wonderful.
I'll take any other action relative hereto.
Thank you. And you,
I second.
wonderful. Okay, so now, discussion. Any discussion on this?
I think it's important that we identify that this is not in line with FinCom's
Yes.
guideline. And make an affirmative, recognize we're making an affirmative decision not to change our budget. I think we have demonstrated a very strong approach to the budget the last 2 years. And that, collectively, if we were a K-12 district, we would have come in under the guideline. So, I really am in favor of where we are and don't think we should have to cut something from a budget that we've done so carefully, line item by line item, because it will be a cut to something. And I think we should stay where we are.
Actually, I
Do
think
you want to just go ahead,
I
Michelle?
think that we have to remind once again the public that this is a zero-based budget. It's taking into account line by line every possibility, starting from scratch. You go to where it goes. It's true that it's a little over the recommended, but it's really, it sounds a lot in 90,000 in percentage. It's really neglectful, and I don't think we should actually force the budget. I'm quite sure that the town meeting will generously approve it.
And it's also a level service budget. And I always believe we should try to run a level service budget at the very least to town meeting.
full support, and I would predict that the FinCom will continue to be confident in our work, notwithstanding the gap with their guideline. They do their guideline, and they should. We do our budget, and we should, and I'm delighted that the gap is tiny this
Relative.
year. I'm sorry that our side is higher than theirs, but
In one of our
in
districts.
one of our districts. But the educational plan is what this speaks to, and it's what we support.
Great, yeah, I would concur.
Any other comments?
No.
Great, I would just, before I take the vote, I just want to mention also that even though the guideline remained above where we are, the Finance Committee did many times, and many people there commented that the process was extremely
Yes.
collaborative and transparent. They were very appreciative of the information that was brought. So I want to share that with you and Jared, although you heard some of it, not all of it, and also publicly, that it was very highly appreciated that this process has been extremely clear and to the point, which is great. I also completely agree that we should stay right where we are. We have been shown very clearly why this number is what it is. It's exactly what we need and no more. And I believe wholeheartedly we should stick to it. Just to Wally's point about the fact that if we were a K-12 district, we would be right at the guideline. I just want to highlight that because it's true, although the 150 was over in one and under in the other, that was actually coincidence. Each of the districts came, the numbers are exactly what each district needs. And actually, as the chair of the guidelines committee pointed out when she convened the last guidelines meeting for them to all vote, when they had initially done the guidelines, they kind of figured out what they were giving to the town, and that had a number for the schools, and did what they could to break it apart one district to the other. But that was somewhat, as she said, estimating work on their part. And so really, in terms of looking at it as a group guideline, if you did that, we did come in exactly at what they had targeted for both districts, which speaks a lot to the budgeting that went on here. So,
Yeah, I think we
great job.
I think we had a good season with FinCom. I also, we've adjourned the region, but I want to thank Carlisle FinCom for the work
Oh, yes.
they did, and we had very good conversations with them the 2 times we were over there. So,
Great.
yeah. Great, any further comments? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, let's see, vote to approve the capital budget.
make a motion that the Concord School Committee votes to approve the CPS fiscal year 21 capital article in the motion as presented.
Second?
Great, is there discussion on this one?
So you've seen where
We've
that
seen it.
900,000 is gonna go with the
Oh, yeah.
ERU work, and,
Yeah.
so this is just the formal. You
Yeah.
voted that last time, this is just the formal article.
And
Yep.
this is a number that is worked in concert with the town manager.
Yes.
Yes, it's the number that's given to us
Typical.
from the town, and we are working within their number, not asking for anything more.
Right.
Any
Second?
further discussion or comments on that one? Did
Uh,
someone seconded, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned the number. This is a borrowing article, and it's in
900.
the amount of
At
$900,000.
900,000, yes.
Good.
Great, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, and the last one is a donation from ExxonMobil. I'm trying to pull it up here. Laura, could you give us a little background?
Yeah, I'd actually be happy to. This is the Exxon station proximate to Willard, and they're highly supportive of Willard. This is actually an annual submission that the owner of the station puts into the corporate Exxon, and it's just a really nice community gesture, and I think we feel well supported by them and are grateful for their efforts to go submit and request on the behalf of Willard. So
Yeah.
it's
That's great,
really collaborative.
great, that's nice. I would take is there a motion? I would take a motion that the Concord School Committee votes to accept a gift check in the amount of $500 from ExxonMobil Corporation to Willard School.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Court moved that, you've all seconded.
I would note that they've asked that it be, or in fact certified in their language, and Principal Lucy, that it will be used in math and science instructional outcomes.
Okay, any discussion?
Given Article 51 and the fact that the state is in
Yes.
active litigation against ExxonMobil for knowing about the effects of climate change and not only hiding it, but working to convince people it didn't exist. And it will be most affecting of students in our elementary schools. I can't vote to accept this.
Okay. Any other comments? Wally does not want to vote to accept it.
So
I don't think we should accept it.
I certainly can appreciate that. Any gift can come with implied obligations or understandings. As I said before, I was gratified that it calls out science. I did consider, to your point, Wally, would this school committee want to make its opinion known, if not direction to you, because I think you oversee the expenditure of funds. But math and or science is more general than I would have liked to see for a gift from ExxonMobil. And I would have said that with or without the pending litigation, the ongoing litigation. I would also say, however, that every gift we receive speaks to the motives of the giver. And I don't want to cast aspersions on anybody, including the fellow who runs this station, because this was not a corporate decision. This was a neighbor decision, a neighbor businessman, which to me puts it in a different camp. Uncomfortable nonetheless, but it puts it in a different camp for me.
I would say that if that town business owner and retailer wanted to make a direct donation, I would feel differently about it than it coming from ExxonMobil Corporation, and we certify that we've received it, and I'm not in favor of justifying what they did.
Comments?
Yeah, it's. I would urge the committee to accept the donation at the end of the day. I think that honestly speaking, if we will go and check every corporation, most corporations, big corporations in the world, give lots of donations to many good causes, and check really everything we would be short in money to science, to universities, everything. I think that we need to, they're in litigation, and we need to separate our causes from this. It's a difficult thing. I honestly didn't think about it. I've been in this place before in life, in other organizations, much larger donations, and I always urge to actually take the donation while making the statement that you're making, which I totally accept, but I would urge to accept the donation.
Thea, do you want to comment?
No, I just, I appreciate Wally's point of view, and it's fine if we disagree, which I think is perfectly okay. I would look at it with the lens of, this is a member of the community, and he's generously assisted with getting a donation from the corporate entity, there's no doubt about that. So, and with the collaboration of Mr. Lucy, so I'm going to vote to accept it, but I completely appreciate Wally's point of view.
I appreciate it too, thank you for bringing it up, and I find this one a difficult one now that I'm bantering it about mentally. Although I think I fall on the side of seeing the owner of this local station as a local neighbor who wants to help our schools. I also can't help seeing it a little bit, and maybe I'm creating this connection, but through the lens of similar to the Volkswagen payments that are going to benefit us in the end. And so if some of their money can benefit the education of our kids in science, then that can be a good thing, I think. So I get your point, it's valid, and I see it. And yet I'm gonna vote for
bad.
it.
I think it's a bit of a false equivalency. That's
Okay, I see that.
I don't hear in this discussion any concern in any quarter about being co-opted by $500 or $500 or $5 million.
No.
So that doesn't take away anything that you say, Wally. Nonetheless, I think we've gotten this far with a neighbor, and we've made a good, strong statement here tonight.
Yep.
I will take $5 million as well.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
We encourage corporate responsibility.
Yes, we do. Any further discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
Nay.
All right, the vote carries 4-1. Unless there are any other comments or questions, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Cynthia
I'll second.
moved- You've all moved it, Cynthia seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.